Continuing in my journey through the IMDB Bottom 100. Up next is number 80, 2005's The Fog, the remake of 1980's The Fog. I have not seen that one, and I can't find it anywhere without me having to pay for it. This is probably going to be the worst analysis in the series. The remake is streaming on HBO Max. The service only has the bad version of The Fog. I'd expect that from Netflix, but you better than that, HBO Max. Well, at least I watched it, and I'm putting out something between the expansion of Everything Everywhere All at Once and the release of either The Northman or The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Yeah, maybe it's because of me not seeing the original, but I really couldn't bring myself to hate this one. It has a 4% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the consensus calls it a so-so remake of a so-so movie. Which strikes me as weird because 1. 4% is pretty far below the rank of so-so, and 2. The original is certified fresh and the consensus calls it a well-crafted return to horror for a genre giant John Carpenter. I bring this up because my uninformed mind thinks that the so-so label describes this much better than the 4% Rotten Tomatoes label. Okay, so anyway, the original The Fog was a horror movie by John Carpenter from 1980 that was not well received by critics at first, but was a box office hit that has gained a cult following. Decades later, in the DVD commentary track, Carpenter and his co-writer Deborah Hill said that they would actually be interested in a remake. And soon enough, it was remade with both of them serving as producers. It was greenlit by Revolution Studios before a script was even written. It was decided that this would be more teen horror and have a PG-13 rating instead of the original's R rating. This movie is also one of Deborah Hill's final projects before her death from cancer the year this movie came out. Not exactly the best way to go out. And Wikipedia doesn't exactly have a deep production story for this. I guess the main actor was Tom Welling, who started right after 3 weeks of filming for season 4 of Smallville. Studio Canal, the studio that owns the original movie, helped with the production in exchange for French distribution rights. And Selma Blair did almost all of her own stunts, which included 2 days where she'd spend 12 hours a day in a water tank with only short surface breaks. I mean, that's gotta be worth something. Also, this was not screened for critics. Anyway, on to the actual movie. It's about an island off the coast of Oregon called Antonio Island, and a bunch of weird, scary stuff happens there, culminating in an evil fog rolling into town. The fog is full of ghosts wanting vengeance because, as we find out over the course of the movie, the town's founding fathers, without spoiling anything, didn't have a great history with them. The most interesting thing about this movie is the concept. The town suffering for the sins of their ancestors. Since probably every civilization was built on violence, this could make an interesting allegory for guilt of your history. But once again, they didn't create this concept. But there are quite a few creepy moments in here. There's a scene involving dishwashing that's a particular standout. There are a few jump scares, but not much worse than other mainstream horror films. The film looks good visually for the most part. There's a decent atmosphere. There are a couple admirable touches, like how some character would be watching Jeopardy and the question on the screen would be something like, "Who was the Greek goddess of revenge?" But then again, I'm not sure how much of all this stuff was just copied from the original. But despite all this, I just wasn't completely invested in it. Although maybe that was just because I was expecting a complete train wreck like most of the other movies on this list, and I was disappointed that I didn't get that. But I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say it was probably because of how flat the characters are. I honestly don't think I could tell you a single thing about anyone in this movie. Also, there are quite a few corny parts here near the end. It stays pretty competent until the climax, but at that point a lot of the death scenes are just done overly dramatic and even in slow motion. Slow motion deaths would have probably been better if the rest of the movie was more fun in that bad 2000s horror sense. But since the rest of it is meant to be totally serious, it just feels out of place. But I still had to read a few negative reviews to fully grasp why it was this poorly received. A pretty convincing argument was that it didn't really add anything new to the story and just did everything the original did but a lot worse. I can buy that. What a terrible way to spoil the original for me. Also, apparently the original is a slower burn that leaves more to the imagination while this one actually shows the ghosts in the fog. That's also not great. Another argument that popped up a lot is the poor CGI, which honestly I noticed a lot less than everyone else, mostly because the CGI is, well, it's fog. I mean, you try to CGI in a dinosaur or something as a villain in your horror movie and people will notice it doesn't look like it's actually there. But with fog, it's fog. It's not a solid object, it just clouds up around everything. No, it doesn't move like actual fog. It's quicker, but while watching it I thought that was kind of the point. This is not normal fog. The same goes for the ghosts. They're not solid objects or anything and they don't look cartoony. Maybe I'm just blind to bad effects in these cases, which doesn't look good on me. But either way, it does kind of open the question of why they even use CGI fog in the first place. I mean, I guess in 2005 it was okay to not know that CGI is not scary, but I'm pretty sure fog is easy to create practically. I don't really know much about what these kinds of things cost, but was it really easier and cheaper to hire somebody to put time and effort into creating fog in a computer than to just turn on a fog machine? Maybe speed up the footage a little when need be? Probably how they filmed the original. But either way, I found the CGI to only be noticeable in parts where it was creating actual objects. And yeah, it was pretty bad. On that topic, one of these scenes involved large, flying, bad CGI glass shards in the scene that could possibly be the most toned-down PG-13 death I've ever seen. So it shows the shards going through someone's body, in slow motion by the way, and there isn't a single drop of blood. The wound isn't even red, and no, it's not that anything happened off screen or it was obscured by shadows or anything. That would make sense. They showed it in detail, and apparently this guy doesn't have any blood in his body. Okay, but anyway, this didn't really seem much worse to me than any other bad horror movie, but judging by the reception of people who actually saw the original, I'm probably wrong. If I saw that one, there is a good chance that I'd think this is much worse than I do now. I can't say for sure, so I'm not even going to rate this. If I did, it would probably be 2.5 stars, but I'm not. I'm not informed enough to say something serious about this movie. This video was a complete waste of time.